I'm sure you've seen the headlines by now. Donald Trump just said he's going to be a dictator from day one. He didn't say that, but that's what they're saying he said. We'll show you what he said. It's actually hilarious. Plus, Jeffrey Epstein, again, Dick Durbin refuses to release these flight logs. He's been asked about it a couple of times now. He talked about it in a Senate committee hearing, sorta, and we'll show you the latest on that. What's he hiding? And an explosive day on Capitol Hill yesterday, and we really learned where the Ivy League stand on calling for a Jewish genocide, and it's beyond outrageous. All of that and a whole lot more. Let's go live right now. It's Larry time. I really just say it's Larry time. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I am Larry O'Connor. Call me Larry, and let's get right to it. I honestly, as soon as I think I've seen it all from the media hysteria over Donald Trump, they outdo themselves. Donald Trump, a town hall in Iowa on Hannity's show. And boy, we're going to break this entire question and answer down a little bit, because the way Sean Hannity asks this question is amazing. You know that at the Atlantic and Washington Post and New York Times and MSNBC and CNN with Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, and Jake Tapper, they spent the last 4 or 5 days warning the world that if Donald Trump really does win the election next year, we lose our country, we lose our democracy, we lose our republic, we lose our Constitution, because he's going to be a tyrannical dictator. So Sean Hannity begs Donald Trump to promise everyone that he won't do that, which is, by the way, an insulting question to ask. But here's how it went.
Issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you. Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
I have seen this 5 times and it still makes me laugh. It's hilarious. It's objectively funny. We've known this guy. He's been in our life for a couple of decades now, from Celebrity Apprentice and Apprentice to being president. I forgot about that part. Probably should have led with being president. And now, do we not know what he's doing here? Promise the American people that you will not abuse your power and be tyrannical dictator. All right, except for day one. That's funny. And Sean Hannity's begging him. He did. By the way, that wasn't even a question, Sean. You're basically, Mr. Trump, I here's what I want you to say. Just affirm it, please. So that's the big. So everyone's, he's going to be a dictator. Well, let this play out a little bit. Actually, see what he said.
Except for
he's going crazy.
By the way, let me just real fast. When I saw this, when Sean Hannity said, "You're not going to use your powers as president to inflict retribution against your political enemies, are you?" And I was thinking, "Oh, please say yes." Please say, because guess what? Donald Trump's political enemies are pretty much our political enemies and enemies of our Constitution, right? Who are we talking about in terms of his political enemies? We're talking about the Justice Department and the FBI weaponizing the law against conservatives, going after parents who go to school board meetings, or Catholics who dare to enjoy the Latin Mass over the Novus Ordo, right? Yeah, that's right. I said Novus Ordo. I won't take it back. That's who we're talking about here, isn't it? We're talking about going after prosecutors who look the other way when a Democrat breaks the law, like Joe Biden's son, but then does an FBI armed raid on a person's home, a father who was praying a rosary out inside a Planned Parenthood abortion factory, right? I mean, I do want Trump to go after them. Because they're not just his political enemies, they're the enemies of us and our freedoms and our Constitution and the rule of law. Number one. Number two, let's really state what's happening here. When the Atlantic and Jeffrey Goldberg and Jake Tapper and Joe Scarborough and the New York Times and the Washington Post, when they warn that Donald Trump will abuse the power of the presidency and seek retribution against his political enemies, what they're really saying is they're scared that Trump is going to do exactly what Biden has done. Exactly what Biden has done. So I see this and I'm like, I hope he does kind of do that, right? And so when he said, only day one, I was actually, it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be fun. Let's see what he's going to do. I hate to disappoint you. I hate to disappoint you, but Donald Trump's interpretation of abusing his power and being a dictator on that one day, the first day of his presidency, it's not quite what we were hoping for.
Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill.
That's not retribution. I'm
going to be, you know, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
So that sounds to me like you're going back to the policies when you were president.
That's
all right.
exactly
an issue, though, because the media has been focused.
We're getting our mic back working here. For some reason, the mic pack. We're good? All right, we're good. So listen, that's not exactly the dictatorial powers that I was hoping for. Again, just for a day, just for the first day. Yeah, he's going to close the border and he's going to resume drilling. Now, come on, that's not really dictatorial power in any way whatsoever. In fact, that's exactly Joe Biden did the reverse of that, right? On his first day in office, he shut down the Keystone Pipeline. He ended new oil contracts on federal lands and put a stranglehold on the oil companies. And he reversed Trump's policy of enforcing our immigration laws. In fact, you want to talk about abuse of power. What Joe Biden has done on the border is ignore our existing laws and open up the border to the tune of at least 8 million illegal aliens crossing the border. So, listen, it's funny. I think that Trump's delivery was brilliant. But my concern here is that Donald Trump has advisors in his inner circle right now who have led him to believe that if on day one he resumes drilling in this country for oil and natural gas and enforces our border and shuts down our border, that in some way is an abuse of power. It's not. It's completely constitutional within the executive powers of the president because we know Biden did exactly the opposite. So if Biden couldn't do it, so could Trump. That's not being a dictator, Mr. Trump. I promise you. But again, the most important thing here is he was asked, you're not going to be a dictator and abuse your power. And he said, only on day one, which last I heard means for 24 hours, yes, I'm going to do that. Now, nobody in their right mind. I mean, what kind of fool would you have to be to think that that's Donald Trump saying that he's going to abuse his power and be a dictator? Nobody would think that, right? Well, here's Mitt Romney.
What do you make of Donald Trump last night saying he'd be dictator for a day and not ruling out dictatorial tendencies?
Let me pause there because the question is beautiful. You just saw the entire question and answer of what was actually asked and what was said. And this reporter asked Mitt Romney, what do you make of Donald Trump saying that he'll be dictator for a day and that he won't rule out abusing his authority? Now, any normal U.S. senator or member of Congress or any normal human being, an intelligent human being, and especially a Republican like Mitt Romney should stop for a minute and say, wait, he didn't say that. What are you talking about? What kind of question is that? And if you didn't actually see the interview like you just did, like I just did with you, then you would say, listen, I doubt he really said that. I'll go look at it first, but I can't believe he said that, right? No, not good old Mittens. No, he took it hook, line, and sinker.
It's funny. Donald Trump says so many absurd things that I don't even know how you respond to them. So I sort of laugh and think he's trying to entertain his base. It's a dangerous course to go down, of course, but that's what he does on a regular basis. And I sort of laugh at what he's saying. So the other day he was saying we're going to get rid of Obamacare. It's like, really? What have you got? You said that when you were president. Did you ever introduce a plan to replace Obamacare? No. So at some point,
Mitt Romney also ran for president saying that he was going to get rid of Obamacare. He didn't win, of course, but then he became a U.S. senator a few years later. And do you remember his plan that he put forth? Mitt Romney is like, if I had any kind of power in the U.S. government, I would have done something. He's a senator. He's a senator for one more year at least. So, yeah, I mean, what kind of moron would you have to be to actually think that what Donald Trump just said was that he plans on abusing his presidential power and being a dictator, right? I mean, other than Mitt Romney and that reporter. But what other kind of idiot do you have to be? Oh, how about the Associated Press? What a beautiful headline. Trump declines to rule out abusing power to seek retribution if he returns to the White House. I guess technically that's accurate. Although it's not. That's a lie. That's just fake news. All he said was, on day one, I'm going to shut down the border and I'm going to drill. So here he is talking about John Kerry over there in United Arab Emirates. We talked about it on Monday on this program, explaining why we need to drill, why it's in our best interest to do that. Oh, by the way, before I even get into this for a second, this whole thing of Trump's going to abuse his power, Trump's going to be a dictator, Trump's going to do all these things. You know, whenever they warn about this stuff, do you notice who gets left out of the conversation? It's Trump being a dictator. And it's the media and Democrats in Washington, D.C., who are trying to hold up the firewall to keep him from being the authoritarian dictator that he's clearly going to be. Thank God we're here to protect you from Trump. Who's missing in this equation? If Donald Trump becomes president, how exactly is he going to become president? How does he have that first day in the Oval Office? How is he capable of exerting these dictatorial powers in the first place? Who's missing from the conversation? You're missing from the conversation. The voters, the people. When they say they're protecting America from the dictatorial authoritarianism of Donald Trump, what they're saying is they're protecting America from you. They're protecting America from you voting the way they don't think you should vote. And this is how Donald Trump won 8 years ago. All right, here's Donald Trump talking about drilling and juxtaposing it with what John Kerry is doing right now over in the desert.
And we have more oil and gas than they do. Our country can be rich again. John Kerry has to be stopped. He's destroying our country. This guy. I mean, think of it. He goes all over the world in a private jet, by the way. He goes all over the world talking to these people about getting rid of coal plants. They all laugh at him. They, treat him with respect. He's gone. They say, what an idiot. What a jerk. And we have more.
They do that. They also sort of have to turn the fan on and open the windows because he farted so much, stinking up the place. Let's not forget that. Watch Monday's show if you're lost right now. Then they turned the conversation to Joe Biden. And Donald Trump, I don't think has ever said anything on the record about this, about whether he thinks that Joe Biden will actually be the nominee for the Democrats.
Critical of Joe Biden. And of course, he is struggling cognitively. I can't think of, in the last couple of months, any appearance that he has had where he wasn't either mumbling or bumbling or stumbling or having no clue where to go, where to exit. Now, my question is, do you think in 11 months he will be their candidate?
I personally don't think he makes it. Okay, I haven't said that. I'm saving it for this big town hall. I personally don't think he makes it. I think he's in bad shape physically. Do you remember when he said, I'd like to take him behind the barn? If he took me behind the barn and I went like this, I believe he'd fall over. I believe he'd fall over. Who knows? Who knows? But it was okay. And by the way, it was okay for him to say that. He said, I'd like to take him behind. He could say that and everyone thought it was so cute. If I ever said it, they'd say, he's a dictator. He's a horrible human being. It's a whole double standard we have, and not only in the law, but just about everything else, as you know very well. I personally don't think he makes it physically. I watched him at the beach. He wasn't able to lift a beach chair, which is meant for children to lift. You can lift him like that. And mentally, I would say he's possibly equally as bad and maybe worse, but I don't know. I will say this. He's got vicious people surrounding him around that beautiful Oval Office. There are people in that Oval Office that are evil people, bad people, smart people, young, vicious. They're communists and they're bad.
Who do you think?
All right. Now, here's what's ironic. At the very moment Donald Trump was saying that, on Fox News Channel with Sean Hannity. Joe Biden was at a fundraiser up in Massachusetts, and there's no cameras there. It's a fundraiser. They always, keep people from recording. But he was quoted. There were people in the media there, and he was reported to have basically confirmed what Donald Trump just told you, which is he doesn't want to be president. He doesn't want to run again. Frankly, he's done. He's 81 years old. He can barely make it up the short steps of Air Force One, let alone the big staircase without falling. And so here is how it was reported. And Biden says that if Trump wasn't running, he also wouldn't be running. The only reason he's running is because he's been convinced by all those evil people in the White House that he's the only one who can stop Trump. Now, let's unpack this for a second. This means, first of all, that he doesn't have the desire to serve out a second term, right? If Trump weren't running, I probably wouldn't run. Wow. That's a stunner, isn't it? But it also tells you that there are people around him propping him up and keeping him in power against his will by convincing him that he's the only person who can stop Trump. And does anyone now, after seeing this, does anyone think that this guy is not going to step down after he wins re-election? There's no chance, if he were to win, I should say, God help us. There's no chance he's going to serve out all 4 years. No chance. And as you just heard from President Trump, they're talking about it. He doesn't think that he's in the proper mental state or physical state to be able to run, let alone serve for 4 more years. And when the news of this fundraiser hit, he was met by reporters on the tarmac as he was deplaning or getting on his plane in Massachusetts. I'm not sure whether this is in D.C., getting off the plane or getting on the plane. But he was asked specifically, if Trump were running, would you be running? And, well, here's the vim and vigor that Donald Trump was just talking about.
Would you be running for president if Trump wasn't running?
I expect so, but look, he is running, and I have to run.
You drop out if Trump runs out.
No.
Wow, that instills confidence, doesn't it, in our commander-in-chief? I don't think he understood the question. Finally said, well, he is running, so I've got to run. So then Trump, the reporter says, well, if Trump drops out, will you drop out? No. It's been a long time since the SATs, but if A equals B and B equals C, I have no idea how that finishes up, but I think Joe Biden doesn't quite know what's going on. Dick Durbin, as we reported yesterday, is standing in the way of the flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express from being exposed to the American people. That's because he's the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He has the power to release these things. So he was asked by a Fox News reporter yesterday, specifically, why are you blocking these things?
The government has been hiding Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs since he committed suicide 4 years ago. Fighting international sex trafficking should appeal to everybody, no matter what political party. We care about women and children. We care about law and order. We care about corruption. So when Senator Marsha Blackburn from the great state of Tennessee tried to subpoena the flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein, we were surprised that Senator Dick Durbin from the great state of Illinois was making it difficult. And why hadn't Dick Durbin subpoenaed the flight logs himself? Why hasn't any politician until Marsha Blackburn tried to find out who flew on the world's most notorious child sex trafficker's plane? Perhaps they have a good explanation for flying on Jeffrey's jet, like Bill Clinton, who was on humanitarian missions, we're told. Are these flight logs being used as blackmail? What powerful people were on the plane? And what kind of intelligence operation was Epstein running? And why would Senator Dick Durbin be running interference for a dead pedophile? We sent Hillary Vaughn to ask him.
Chairman Durbin, can I ask you a quick question? Why won't you subpoena Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs?
So who are you?
Hillary Vaughn with Fox.
With Fox, of course. I don't.
Oh. So, Senator Durbin, why are you blocking Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs? First of all, who are you? Because the answer to that question depends entirely on who you are and who you're with, and then the disdain. I'm with Fox News. Fox, of course. Only Fox would ask that question. He's right. Only Fox would. Why is that?
I don't know anything about his flight logs.
But why won't you subpoena them? Why don't you want to
I
know?
don't even know the issue. I know who Epstein was, but I certainly don't know anything about the issue.
Well, he was charged with sex trafficking, so why don't you want to know who was utilizing his private plane?
Never been raised by anyone.
Well, Senator Blackburn has wanted to subpoena them, and there hasn't been a vote in your committee.
Said a word to me, not a word.
But aren't you curious, like what high-profile or powerful people might be closeted predators and pedophiles? Doesn't that concern you?
Of course.
So why won't you subpoena them if you can?
It's the first time anyone has raised it. Thank you, Fox.
So are you curious about it? Will you do it?
This is brilliant. What you're about to see unfold before your eyes is the quintessential U.S. Senate constipation. That here you've got a reporter saying, okay, we know this guy was a pedophile, and we know that pedophilia took place on his island, and we know he had an airplane where he shuttled rich and powerful people to that island. Don't you want to know who that was? Shouldn't we make that transparent and public? And his only response is, well, nobody's ever raised it. The question wasn't, has anyone ever raised this? The question is, are you going to do something about it? This is the first I've heard about it. Would have never even thought about it if Fox hadn't brought it up. This is perfect, but it gets worse. It actually gets worse.
Durbin's a liar. Last week, Primetime asked his office why he was blocking votes to subpoena Epstein's flight logs, and they said there wasn't enough time. And then at today's hearing, Durbin complained that Fox was asking him to investigate sex trafficking. Poor little Dick. Durbin.
Senator Blackburn, before you leave, I want to make a point for the record, since I understand you made some statements about the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs. There's a Fox reporter in the hallway who asked me about this, and I said I had not spoken to you one time about this issue. I think you'll back me up on that. I'm not mistaken. I didn't know that this was even a subject of your amendments, which, if you'll recall, you were the first on the list until the 2-hour rule was invoked.
All right, so here, this is, are you seeing what's happening here? Senator Blackburn, I just want to get you on the record here about the whole Jeffrey Epstein flight logs thing. Got a reporter asking me questions about it. You'll agree that you never talked to me about this, right? Again, the issue is not the flight logs. The issue is not whether he blocked the subpoena for the flight logs. The issue is not whether we, the American people, should see who's on the flight logs. The issue is, now, you've never actually talked to me about this thing, right? Right? And so, no. Oh, it gets worse.
I don't know anything about this request on your part. I'll be happy to discuss it with you. But I haven't done any discussion with you to this point, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I know, and I think you're fully aware that I had 2 amendments, one dealing with Epstein and Sotomayor. I brought it up previously.
I have to confess, I didn't know that you'd offer that amendment. Happy to discuss it with you, but I want to point on the record. You and I have never personally discussed this, have we?
Dick Durbin's priority is not the pedophilia, not the children who were abused, not the abusers who may still walk amongst us and have positions of power. Dick Durbin's concern is whether the American people think he had a conversation with another senator about the subpoena and the flight logs. That's all he wants to talk about. That's all he cares about. And by the way, I've read a couple of reports on this. Dick Durbin's staff at the Judiciary Committee have actually gone on the record explaining why the subpoenas were blocked. It has to do with the number of amendments Republicans have put forth. Again, another reason why people hate the Senate, because it's all about the archaic rules instead of actually doing something. So his staff knew about it. He claims he's never heard of it. But now we need to have much more of a discussion and a debate about the discussion that never happened.
We talked briefly on the floor at the
You never
conclusion.
mentioned what the subject matter of your amendment was. You said you wanted to offer your
In committee, I brought up the subject matter of my amendments.
not in my
3
presence.
weeks.
Not only
All right. Thank you, Jesse. Good stuff. But I just want to, I mean, there's more to it, and you should check out Jesse's show last night. But this is the United States Senate. This is why the American people hate Congress. What you just saw there. First of all, we want them to do something, and hopefully not something that harms our country, but do something. And instead, they just talk about things. But in this case, they're not just talking about something or talking about doing something and whether they should do something or not. No, they're talking about whether they were going to do something or not. No, actually, to be more accurate, what they're just doing is they're talking about how they didn't talk about talking about something that they should have been doing or not doing. And that was the most important pressing thing for Dick Durbin to get to the bottom of. Hold on. Let's talk about the fact that we never talked about doing or not doing this thing that I'm told I was talked to about doing earlier. And now that we've resolved this issue and that we just talked about the fact that we didn't talk about this thing that we were going to be talking about doing or not doing, now we've resolved the issue and now everybody knows the truth. We never talked about talking about doing that thing that we're not going to do. What was it we were talking about again? Oh, that's right. A rich and powerful pedophile who abused young girls and all of the rich and powerful men that abused them with him. And we're never going to get those flight logs. Dick Durbin. All right, let's get down. You know, heard President Trump earlier today. We just played it for you that on day one, he's going to shut down the border. And of course, if you listen to Joe Biden, if you listen to Secretary Mayorkas or Kamala Harris, she's our border czar, you know, they will tell you that the border is secure. There's nothing to shut down. Are you kidding? It's already shut down. Here's the latest video from Bill Melugin of Fox News. So we see the wall there. They're just going for a stroll. I'm sure that this is just a tourist destination. I'm sure that those are people that tour buses unloaded, and people are just walking and seeing the beautiful terrain and scenery and the landmark of the wall. I'm sure that that's not a threat. None of those people, all with the same kind of backpack, by the way. I'm sure none of them are actually going to try to breach the wall and enter the country illegally. Oh, wait a minute. I think I was wrong. Here they all are, getting through a broken part of the wall, chugging through, and then running to freedom. Wow, he brought a suitcase. There's the Border Patrol just standing by, watching it happen. And here's my favorite part. You see that guy right there with the phone, taking a video of it, hiding his face with a mask? Because, you know, COVID's so bad there out in the desert. Dressed all in black. That's a human smuggler. That's a coyote, a human smuggler. And watch what he does after his group, his cargo gets delivered to America. Just a big old shrug emoji. What are you going to do about it, America? Hey, broad daylight, breaking the law. That's the broken slat from the wall. You can see it got welded out or cut out and then pulled aside. Apparently, some people are thinking about maybe we should replace this. Why? Walls don't work. All right. But then Bill Melugin and the crew at Fox, they did a little bit of extra reporting, and they actually started talking to some of the people who just crossed illegally. Oh, let's get that back. Here's the first one. Oh, is that not showing? I'm so sorry. Oh, man. Isn't it amazing? After what, 2.5 months? That's the first time I've done that. I'm sorry. Let's watch it again. I had the wrong tab up.
I love you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything, Joe Biden. I'm a good person. I want to be a good person here in the United States.
I'm sure he is a good person. He's a good person. He crossed the border illegally, which is not a thing a good person does. That's actually a bad thing because it's breaking the law. But he's thanking Joe Biden, as well he should, because if Joe Biden weren't president, he probably wouldn't have been allowed in. One other thing, I don't think he is a good person, actually. frankly, because good people don't brazenly break the law like that. You know what good people do? Good people currently are sitting, waiting in line to come into this country legally. They don't jump in front of other people. We learned that when we were in kindergarten. You don't jump the line. You wait patiently in the back of the line until it's your turn. Those are the rules. We have a society. So he's not a good person. You know, there's another thing that he's not. He's not Mexican. He's also not Honduran. He's not Guatemalan. In fact, he's not even from Latin America. Watch, listen.
I love you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything, Joe Biden. I'm a good person. I want to be a good person here in the United States.
That's a Middle Eastern accent. He's Moroccan. Bill Malugin found out later. Where are you from? Morocco. I'm from Morocco. You know, Morocco. Just on our southern border. Everybody knows that. You take a geography test. It's the United States, Rio Grande, Morocco. There's another one, actually.
I came here because I want quality life. You know, America is a land of opportunity.
Yeah, it's a land of opportunity here in America. Is it still? It's certainly the land of opportunity to break the law and get away with it. I mean, we see that every day in our city streets and certainly on our border. That's why they're here, because it's the land of opportunity. And he's also from Morocco as well. Don't know how many other Middle Easterners or people from Malaysia or China or anywhere else. But here's the point. If you believe that it doesn't matter that we secure our border, if you believe that we shouldn't have a wall or shouldn't have any sort of immigration policies, if you believe that anybody outside of the United States of America who is worse off than we Americans are in terms of our economy, in terms of our way of life, in terms of our quality of life, in terms of our cost of living, in terms of economic opportunity, if you believe that anybody out there deserves the right to come here, no questions asked, and just join the party, then it doesn't matter what country they came from. Frankly, there is no limit. There literally is no limit. You believe, and this is what the Democrats' position is at this point, as articulated every single time they have the opportunity, that basically every single person in the world has a right to come to America, work here, take our money, by the way, and also take advantage of all the government programs that we have. The kids get to have a school system. They can be citizens. They can vote. Everybody in the world has a right to come here to America. No questions asked. That's what we're seeing play out. All right, yesterday on the Hill, House of Representatives had an extraordinary hearing with regard to the rise of anti-Semitism that we've seen on college campuses. The chairwoman of the Education Committee, Virginia Fox, called in the president of Harvard, president of MIT, and the president of the University of Pennsylvania. New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik asked a very simple question. Is calling for the genocide of the Jews against your school's policy, your code of conduct, and your policy against bullying? And I honestly think that if you watch the way Elise Stefanik does this questioning, and I'm going to play the video right now, I really think that she assumed they were going to all say yes. Of course, that's against our rules. Because then she would follow up and say, okay, then why haven't you enforced the rules? But no, it didn't actually go that way.
At MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules?
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
Yes
speech
or no?
becomes if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes.
No, I think the answer was no, Congresswoman Stefanik. By the way, the other thing that the University of Pennsylvania is recently famous for is that they paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to Joe Biden to be a visiting professor there. That's Joe Biden's college that he actually never taught a class in. She was asked, by the way, what did Joe Biden do actually to earn the $1 million he gave him? He invited people to come and speak. He invited other people to come and lecture. So he was basically hired as a party planner for $1 million. So there you go. Calling for the genocide of the Jews needs to be contextualized, according to these university presidents. We haven't even hit Harvard yet, but let me just be clear. What did she just say? If it reaches the point of conduct, right? Aren't these the people who have been telling us that language is violence, that speech is violence, that they need a safe space if somebody accidentally calls a she a he because, the she looks like a he or was born a he? And now they're suddenly free speech absolutists? Scott Walker from Young America's Foundation should have been sitting there with contracts for these people saying, we'd like a multi-year deal for Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Liz Wheeler, Larry O'Connor to come and give speeches on campus. Now that you're okay with any kind of speech, as long as it doesn't reach the point of conduct, could we just make a deal right now? Because for the last several years, maybe decades now, I've seen my fellow conservatives chased off campus by angry mobs because they dare to give a speech on campus that says, you know what, Ronald Reagan had some really good ideas. That's violence. But calling for the genocide of the Jews, hey, well, let's pull back a minute and find out what the context here is. All right, let's bring Harvard into this.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time.
Yeah, she asked one more time, and the answer is the same. Have you noticed they're all using the same language too? Not out of context, right? Context is the big bugaboo here on this. Good for Congresswoman Stefanik, by the way, because it is incredibly dehumanizing. Think about what they're saying here. Is calling for the genocide of Jews against your code of conduct, is it bullying? Only if it's targeting an individual. Think that through for a minute. You're a Jewish student at Harvard. Dr. Gay's school is Harvard. You're a Jewish student at Harvard, and you see a giant protest going on, calling for the genocide of the Jewish people, and you complain, and they say, but they weren't talking about you specifically. They were talking about all the Jews. Don't take it so personally. That's Harvard's position right now on this. Oh, and by the way, they're all lying. They're all lying. John Hassan from Town Hall actually did some research and looked at Harvard's non-discrimination policy. It was implemented just a few months ago. It defines bullying as, quoting now, words or actions that humiliate, degrade, demean, intimidate, or threaten an individual. Are you telling me that a Jewish student at Harvard doesn't feel intimidated or threatened or degraded when these pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist protesters are screaming from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, thus resulting in the elimination of the Israeli state and thus resulting in the death of millions of Jews. You're telling me that isn't threatening or intimidating? They're all lying. All of them. But let's finish here with testimony. Well, it's not testimony. This is a press conference that was given by the House Republicans that included this young woman who is, in fact, a Jewish student at MIT. The MIT president there was like, well, you know, only if it targets an individual. Here's what's happening right now at MIT. You talk about targeting an individual.
Thank you so much, Representative Fox and Representative Stefanik, for inviting me here today. My name is Talia Khan. I am an undergraduate alumna of MIT and a current graduate student at MIT. I am the daughter of a Jewish mother and an Afghan Muslim immigrant father. I am the proud president of the MIT-Israel Alliance, and I am a Jewish student currently immersed in an extremely toxic anti-Semitic atmosphere at MIT. The MIT administration, namely President Sally Kornbluth, has failed to address the crisis of rampant anti-Semitism on campus. There is a radical anti-Israel group at MIT called the CAA. In recent weeks, the CAA's anti-Semitic rhetoric has shifted the culture on campus to such an extreme of intolerance that 70% of MIT's Jewish students polled feel forced to hide their identities and perspectives. An Israeli student whose identity and personal info was sold online for a bounty has not left his dorm room in weeks out of fear due to death threats. For my part, I was forced to leave my study group for my doctoral exams halfway through the semester because my group members told me that the people at the Nova Music Festival deserved to die because they were partying on stolen land.
She goes on and she does a great job, and your heart breaks for her and her fellow students. But apparently you have to be a Republican now in Congress, or in this country for that matter, to actually see this bigotry for what it is. And I hope American Jews are seeing who's standing by them and who's calling this hatred out, who's calling this bigotry out. And also, where is the media on this story? For the last several years, I've been told that what happened in Charlottesville was the most horrendous display of racism, bigotry, and anti-Semitism that America has seen since the civil rights era of the 60s. And I'm sorry, but we're seeing Charlottesville on steroids on a daily basis in this country. And frankly, nothing like what you just heard this young woman describe going on the campus of MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Nothing like that happened in Charlottesville. Joe Biden said he was running for president to restore the soul of America because of what he saw at Charlottesville. Well, look at what's happened to the soul of America on his watch every day, and he says nothing. And his press secretary makes excuses for it. And if you raise the specter of outward anti-Semitic bigotry in this country to the press secretary, she immediately pivots and talked about anti-Muslim hate. This is disgusting what's going on. But please remember who's really on the side of the Jewish people and who's on the side of the bigots. And also on Capitol Hill, now just down the hall from that hearing was another hearing about the threat of transgender policies for women's sports. Riley Gaines, of course, the swimmer from the University of Kentucky, who tied Leah Thomas, the man swimming as a woman, in that famous race a couple of years ago. Since then, she has become an activist to try to protect women's sports. She was harangued and badgered by one of the congresswomen, Summer Lee, in this hearing. But boy, did she have the last word.
This teamwork and goal setting. In terms of mental health, studies show that participating in youth sports is associated with lower rates of anxiety and depression, lower amounts of stress, higher self-esteem and confidence.
Women must stop. Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness. And Ranking Member Lee, if my testimony makes me transphobic, then I believe your opening monologue makes you a misogynist. Thank you.
Now, I'm sorry, I thought our clip had the first statement from Congresswoman Lee, where she said that we're going to be hearing a lot of transphobic rhetoric and hate speech and bigotry later on. And she was specifically talking about Riley Gaines, because Riley Gaines saying that this is, by the way, always use the left's language. This was Riley Gaines's lived experience. Okay, it was her truth. But it literally was. Her lived experience was she went to go to a swim meet for the NCAA championships, and she was forced to share a locker room with a man, a fully intact biological man, who, by the way, even though he identifies as a woman, this Leah Thomas is still attracted to women. Leah Thomas dates women while identifying as a trans woman. And Riley Gaines had to share a locker room and change clothes and shower with this person. And when she complained about it, she was told to go somewhere else. She was told, and Leah Thomas's teammates were told to get psychological therapy to get over their hangups. And that was called bigotry and transphobia by Summer Lee. So you just heard Riley Gaines responding to that, saying, okay, fine, if I'm transphobic, you're misogynist, which is great, because that is misogyny, right? Telling the little ladies to shut their mouth and take it. Sit in the corner. I don't want to hear from you. Here's Summer Lee's response.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. I now recognize Ms. Perry for her opening statements.
Good afternoon, Chairman McLean, Ranking Member Lee, and distinguished members of the
I'm sorry, we got the wrong video loaded in here, and I apologize. Summer Lee then went on to, Congresswoman Summer Lee wanted to expunge the record of Riley Gaines's remarks, right? She called me a misogynist. I want that removed from the record. Thankfully, the chairwoman refused to do so, but that's who she's dealing with. Also at this hearing, by the way, was this woman, Kim Russell. She was the lacrosse teacher, the women's lacrosse teacher at Oberlin College.
I'm Kim Russell, an ambassador for the Independent Women's Forum. Why am I here? I'm 56 years old. I'm an athlete, a coach, a mother, and a teacher, and a longtime advocate for women and girls. This has been my life and my passion. I played 2 sports at the D1 level that never would have been possible without Title IX. I've been a lacrosse coach for over 27 years. I'm in 3 halls of fame for coaching and contributing to the growth of lacrosse, and there's actually an award in my name. Oberlin College removed me from coaching and offered me an administrative position after I chose to publicly tell my story and refused to be silent or back down about my belief that men, no matter how they self-identify, should not be allowed to compete in women's sports.
Yeah, she went on to tell that story, and it's a compelling one. But understand something. Up until about a minute and a half ago in America, Kim Russell, Coach Kim, she would be celebrated as a champion for feminists, a champion for women's rights, a champion for equal rights, a champion for women's sports and the advancement of women's issues in America. And now she's fired, she's silenced, she's censored, and she's bullied and intimidated as a bigot. But again, just like in the issue with Israel and with anti-Semitism on our college campuses, take a look at which political party is standing up for Coach Kim and Riley Gaines and protecting women and women's sports, and which party is telling them to shut up and take it. In fact, here's one of them. This woman, Fatima Goss Graves, she's with the National Women's Law Center. My goodness.
And success in school sports depends on a whole range of factors, including how hard you work and coaching and access to really good resources and facilities. And trans students participate in sports for the same reason as their kids, because it is fun, because it creates belonging and community, because it teaches so much about persistence and leadership and discipline, unless they learn to lose gracefully, hopefully. And often they learn to win with dignity, hopefully. They learn to do the sort of work that means you have higher grades and stay connected to school. I want every kid to have that chance.
Yeah.
To have
You women, you girls, just suck it up and learn how to lose gracefully. Just like the trans kids do. That's a hell of a message. Meanwhile, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as soon as you think that she said the stupidest thing that you've ever heard from an elected official, she outdoes herself. Seriously, I think she's right up there with Kamala Harris here in terms of being president of the Mensa Club here in Washington, D.C. She's found a new angle on what's wrong with the whole transgender sports issue.
I've spent a decent amount of my time here in Congress sitting through panels and hearings of men attempting to restrict the rights of women and telling us that it's for our own good. But I want to dive a little bit more deeply into why this issue with targeting trans women in sports is particularly problematic, not just for trans girls, but for all of us. We're here today because there's a proposal here, and there's several proposals here, to further marginalize trans women in sports. And I think about this all the time.
I just need to pause for a second here. I'm so confused, and I'm feeling a little targeted or no, triggered, let's say. Why does she keep saying trans girls and trans women? I thought trans girls are girls. I thought trans women are women. Why draw the distinction? What's her problem? Why is she such a bigot? I'm feeling violently attacked right now, actually, by this kind of distinction where there shouldn't be one.
Because trans people in the United States doesn't even exceed 1% of our population. And yet there is so many resources and energy and time dedicated to figuring out how we can more finely exclude them from our sports.
Is that what's going on here? You know, she makes a compelling point. They're only 1% of the population. Why are we spending so much time on this? You know what? I've got a follow-up question to that. They're only 1% of our population. Why are you trying to upend every societal norm that we have lived with in Western civilization for millennia to accommodate that 1%? They're only 1% of our population, but we can no longer have exclusive men's and women's rooms. We can no longer have exclusive men's and women's locker rooms. We can no longer use he or she. They're only 1% of our population, but every single show you watch on Netflix has to have one of them in your storyline. They're only 1% of our population. Thank you. You're right. So why must we upend everything that we have set in stone in this country to accommodate that 1%? She'll never see it that way. No. Here's liberal, progressive political positions on transgenderism. They're only 1% of our population. You must now upend and change and throw out every single distinction between males and females that we have all understood for thousands of years. And if you dare to challenge it, question it, or God forbid, have a public hearing like we're having today here in Congress, you're the problem. You're the bigot. You're the transphobe, and you're wasting our time and our money because, after all, it's only 1% of the population. That's her position. And we're supposed to shut up and say, oh, yes, that's so wise of you, AOC. Oh, but it gets worse.
And I thought, why so much effort and dedication on such a tiny portion of the U.S. population when there virtually is no major issue that is precipitating? And started to realize that a lot of these proposals here involve invasion of privacy of all women.
See, that's it. She has drilled down on the real issue here. We're just trying to invade the privacy of all women. Yeah, those of us who are trying to keep a girls' locker room where teenage girls are changing and getting ready to play their sport, we're trying to keep that as women only and not allow biological men to invade that space. We're the ones who are trying to invade women's privacy, all women, she says. And why? Well, I'm going to skip ahead here because she's going to reveal her really, really brilliant, well thought out, well-educated conclusion.
Said there are some proposals. I mean, we've seen this in Ohio. There was a proposed ban on trans athletes that originally allowed for genital examinations on minors in order to quote unquote protect women. Is that correct?
All right, so this is the big thing now. That, oh, the only way you can enforce these laws is to have genital examinations on minors. Right? Right? How else are you going to know? All right, yeah, I got 2 answers for you on that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. Number one, it doesn't have to be that hard. Here's what we do. And I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head, okay, but I'm sure there's a flaw in this, but I think this will work. When a baby is born, the doctors involved in the birth of that child will take a look at that moment of the naked baby coming out of his or her mother's womb, and they will determine whether that child is a boy or a girl. And then we should have a document of some kind, some sort of official government record. Call it a certificate, let's say. A birth certificate. There you go. Again, I'm just sort of improvising here. I'm coming up with an ad lib, but I think it'll work. So you come up, you get this birth certificate, and the doctor puts whether the baby is a boy or a girl on that certificate and signs it. And then that birth certificate goes with that person, that human being that was just born for the rest of their lives. And then whatever activity they want to participate in school, when they register for school, the school says, well, can we see your birth certificate here as you register? And when they register for school, the birth certificate will show that that's a boy or a girl. And then that'll be their record in the school. Right? What do you think? Are you with me? See, of course, we can't do that now because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and progressive activists for the transgender agenda, Democrats, they've now upended that too, because we don't have birth certificates that define male or female anymore. So that's what makes it challenging. Shoot. All right, we can't do that. All right, one other solution. Just a thought. AOC has no children that have been through sports and athletics in their school, and I don't think she ever played a sport, so she might not know about this. Just a thought, just a hunch. When a child goes out for sports in their middle school or their high school, let's say they have to have a physical exam specifically for participating in sports. Let's call it a sports physical. I come up with that term because it exists. In fact, anyone watching this right now who has children who have played sports in school knows that they already have to do this. Every single child in organized sports in schools has to have a sports exam. And for boys, at least, I know for boys, part of that physical is a hernia check. And let me just say, for the women out there who don't know about a boy's hernia check, it's rather invasive, actually, in the nether regions. Can I say nether regions? Is that all right? Yeah. Got the thumbs up on that one. Yeah. Oh, trust me. If a boy has a hernia check, there is definitely a genital examination connected to it. And so problem solved, AOC. There's not going to be any genital examinations to determine boys and girls. Whenever we have a hernia check, the doctor will know whether that person should participate in boys sports or girls sports. Done. Solved. Oh, hold on. I know what you're thinking. Wait, that won't work because girls don't get the same kind of hernia check. Oh, they will now. You see, AOC wants to allow biological males to compete as girls in girls sports. So that means that anyone who wants to compete in sports, even on the girls team, they're going to have a hernia check because that girl might in fact have male genitalia. So hernia checks for everybody, and then we'll know for sure. Got it? Good. See you tomorrow.